welcome to Shakti Yoga with Shaili. I am Shaili. Have you heard of that universe talks to you in its own unique way? But did you ever wonder, how do I understand this communication? Well, you know what? To answer these and more such fascinating questions, I have with me Alyssa Lynn, a yoga teacher, a Reiki practitioner, and a deeply spiritual person. Welcome, Alyssa.
Thank you. That was a beautiful introduction.
For a beautiful person that you are.
Oh, thank you. Very sweet.
So how are you today?
I'm doing well. The sun's out. I put laundry in. Feels like a positive day.
Finding happiness, joy, and seeking positivity in every little action that we do, right?
Absolutely. The simplicity is what brings me the most joy, to be honest.
We all need to understand that better so we can imbibe it in our everyday life.
Agreed. 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 We're always searching so much for, I don't know, like adventure, I think. And sometimes we have to remind ourselves that the simple things are really what grounds us into the moment more than anything. The simple things that everyone has to do, like folding your laundry, washing your dishes, making your bed, things like that are in our minds, like like mundane and the things that aren't going to ignite this adventure spirit. But it's, to me, it's the simple things like that that make me feel the most grounded in some way. And it's not always like chasing this grand adventure. Not that grand adventures are amazing, but knowing that if you're constantly chasing the grand adventure, you're missing half of your life.
Oh.
You know, like it's these little actions every day that make up the most of your life, not like the big vacations, you know?
So you're really living the live in the present moment. Wow.
Yeah, mostly because I think so much in my life, I was always wanting to be somewhere else. I think it was just maybe my generation. I'm 34, so we grew up when the internet just started happening. I was one of the first people on Instagram. I remember it just evolving into what it is now. And I remember in my 20s when I was living in the city, I always wanted to be somewhere else, being like, what would it be like if I was able to live in London? Or what would it be like if I was able to live in Paris? Or all of these things. And I wasn't ever really where I was. And then it took me a long time to just really just settle in, to be like, if I was meant to be there, I would be there, but I'm not there. So how can I put on what I would call my vacation goggles and just see the world where I am now as the blessing in some way? And then I just really started to just ground into, this is the magic. Like, this is the magic, not me wanting to be somewhere else, not me always craving to be somewhere else, just really trying to be as present as possible and inviting, and I call it like invite your reality in, like to actually invite your life into your conscious awareness in some way.
Tell me something. I mean, you certainly are someone who's very aware of who you are. Not just the name, not just the personality, not just the title that you have been given, but the person within. And you're very aware of your energy, of the people around you, of the life that you have created around you. That understanding and awareness, isn't that what makes you more perceptive of what we say, the science of the universe? If I am someone who is completely new to this topic, explain it to me. What do we mean by that? How is the universe talking to me at all?
It's a really like vast topic, and I think it's hard for people to grasp because it's not logical. It's something that our brain is going to completely try to point at as like, oh, that's just a coincidence. And so for me, I think it's a couple of things that lead you into the understanding that the universe, your spirit guides, or your higher self is communicating with you, because it's hard being human. Like, it's just hard to be a human being. We're in this body and we're filled with emotions that are sometimes really hard to handle. We're constantly thrown with choices and decisions. And sometimes we don't know what way we're supposed to go. And it's hard to navigate. And so for me, the more present we are in the moment, the more the universe is able to speak to us in the moment, mostly because in my understanding, spirit can only talk to you in the present moment. It can't talk to you in the future. It's not going to talk to you in a past moment. It can only speak to you in the present moment. And it's just giving you little breadcrumbs of just navigating the everyday, like little breadcrumbs of awareness, of guidance, and of support. And the more open we are to the present moment, the more we're able to be open to the signs that the universe or spirit might be showing us at that time. So it's really kind of following that moment of always bringing yourself back to the present, trusting that intuitive ping when you see something and not letting your mind talk you out of it. And so it takes practice. It takes practice. But the more you practice and the more you start allowing yourself to receive guidance, the more guidance you actually start obviously like receiving, because then you're more open to it. And so then the universe starts communicating with you in really unique ways.
You know what you just said could still be very heavy for a lot of people to digest because you yourself said it's illogical for a lot of us, and we just brush it off as coincidence, or maybe saying it, you don't even make sense right now. A lot of people would say that. So maybe just give me an example when you said that be more present for the universe to be able to talk to you. Like, how? Just give me an example.
I think for everyone, like how the universe speaks to everyone is on a very individual level because it's the language of love. And so I think you have to kind of meditate and ask yourself, like, how do I like to receive love? And what moments in my day am I the most present? So some people, they're like, I am the most present when I'm listening to music. I am the most present when I'm reading a book. I am the most present when I'm cooking. I am the most present when I'm going for a walk. So if that's how you are the most open, when you're just the most present in your life, then that's usually when you might start receiving signs, because that's when the universe is able to send them to you. Not when your mind is going a million miles an hour. It's when in your day are you able to be really present in that moment. And then you can start slowly just seeing what signs might be showing up for you. And the signs are always different for other people. It could be a quote in a book. And it's just a quote that just like, it kind of just feels like a ping, like a G chat to me. Like, it's just kind of like a ping, like kind of thing. And so I was reading a book the other day and the quote I read was, not everything is meant to end in disaster. And it was a very simple sentence, but in that moment, that quote meant so much to me because it was in one of those days where I was like really overthinking a lot of things. And so I just knew kind of intuitively, like I was meant to read that quote. And so it's just kind of those things where it's just like a feeling. You can't really describe it as like a logical thing. It's more just like a feeling. And it's something that your brain's going to be like, oh, okay, that's cool. But if it feels true to you, then it is true to you. Like, it's one of those, like, in trusting your intuition. If you're listening to music and you hear a lyric that you're like, wow, that just really like sounds like poetry to me, then that's meant for you to hear. And so I think it's us talking ourselves more into the things in our reality and how everything in your reality, when you're the most present, is meant for you to see, to hear, to witness, just things like that.
Again, I guess what I can understand from this reply of yours, that it's again not anything magical or out of ordinary happening, but just those simple little cues in everyday life, which we just tend to, oh, it's just a quote, oh, it's just a book, oh, it's just a song, oh, it's just a person,
Right.
whereas it is actually layered with messages. So, okay, I have this understanding of um, feeling that connect with a certain thing. What do
Mm-hmm.
I do next? If I have this much understanding, what am I supposed to do next?
Oh, that's a really good question. What do you do next? So for me, if I read that quote, um, I like to reflect on what was happening in the day, where my mind might have been wandering during the day, what I might be facing. So it's a little bit of reflection time. of like, wow, why does that quote resonate so much with me at that time? Or why does that song lyric mean so much to me at that time? And then it's just kind of that little like mirror to yourself of like, what, let's dig a little deeper, Alyssa. Like, what were you thinking about when that sign came? Where were you letting your mind wander to? Or what were you stressing out about during the day that is giving you guidance on it? And so it's a little bit of that like self-reflection and asking yourself, or even asking spirit, like, okay, what am I supposed to do with this? So then it's starting what I like to call like the two-way dialogue. Because once you start receiving signs and you're open to receiving signs, you can have these types of like conversations of just being like, okay, what does that mean? Or what am I supposed to do with that? And then you start opening yourself more to being like, oh, okay. And then slowly, in my opinion, when you start asking those questions, you start to receive more guidance, or you start to like think about things in a different way. So when I read that quote, not everything's meant to end in disaster, it was when I was recently starting to date my current boyfriend, and I was carrying so much trauma from my past relationships, like, oh, this is too good to be true, and then I read that quote and I was like, you know what, that's right. Like, not everything's meant to end in disaster. Why don't I trust that this could be true? Why don't I trust that this could be real? Okay, I have a little bit more healing to do, to trust that not everything is going to be a disaster, and to be present as much as I can in being in something that's healthy and being in something that's good. And you know what I mean? So it just kind of starts a little bit more of like the healing process. So instead of me just self-sabotaging the relationship, because that's all I'm used to, it kind of gave me that little self-reflection moment to be like, you're right. You're right. Not everything's meant to end in disaster. Not every relationship is meant to end in disaster. There are plenty of successful relationships. Why don't I believe that that could be true for me? And then it just kind of started that like, okay, I'm going to meditate on that, or I'm going to start to journal on that. And then just starts that like little bit of like, but just from that simple sentence, that little bit of like that conversation with myself that I probably wouldn't have had if they didn't send me that quote and they didn't send me that sign, to be like, it's not what, don't listen, like in my mind, like, don't listen to those traumatic thoughts, like focus on this kind of thing. So it was like that little sign to make me like dig a little bit deeper and be like, no, you're right. I am letting my fear take the lead, instead of letting what I know and like what I trust and what I'm actually in reality of receiving to be true. I'm letting my fear drift away and see these fake stories, instead of saying what's actually real in my reality right now, And so just from that one sentence, it just turned into like this much larger conversation with myself that then constantly just makes me check in, and it's a quote I think about all the time. And that's something else, like, you get it one time, and sometimes that one sentence or that one song lyric is just something you take with you. It just is that kind of thread that you take with you into your healing journey forever.
Right. So you start connecting dots, right?
Yes, exactly.
Okay, so to make this conversation or this topic more relatable to a lot of people, I just thought of some situations that most of us often come across. Say, for example, that deja vu feeling,
Mhm.
how sometimes a certain conversation or a certain situation feels like a replay. Is that some kind of a sign?
I think that absolutely is a sign. I think it's when you get that kind of intuitive ping, for me, especially in a conversation, it's making you hyper focus into what that person's saying. So it's actually drawing you into the conversation. It's like that ping that goes off to be like, not so much like you've had this conversation before, even though that's the feeling, it's pay attention. And so sometimes we're in a conversation and then we start looking at our phone and we're like, yeah. But then when you have that kind of like intuitive feeling, you're so super focused on what that person's saying, and then you're open to receiving the guidance or whatever they're saying to you. And so I think it's one of those kinds of things where you get that ping in any way, and it's just making you pay attention, like just focus and pay attention. This is meant for you to hear.
and bringing us to the point of stay in the moment.
Exactly.
Okay, what about obstacles? And the obstacle could be something as simple as not able to connect through the phone. Maybe there was a network issue, or maybe you are trying to reach somewhere and there is traffic jam, something as simple as that, something bigger, more traumatic.
Right.
Obstacle. How do you decipher that? In a broader term.
In a broad way, I've had a lot of obstacles in my life, and I always would go to, I remember reading this quote, which to me was a sign, which is rejection is protection is one. And also sometimes when I'm stuck in the traffic jam, or I'm stuck in something, or for me, like I lived in New York, so when you're stuck behind a slow walker, or you're stuck underground and the train's delayed and all of that stuff, I take a deep breath and I just say, what is this meant to teach me? And sometimes it's a simple answer that pops in my head where it's patience. And you just have to be like, please. And I pray and I just say, allow me to practice patience. I'm meant to practice patience in this moment. Allow me to be patient. You're behind a slow, walker in the city because they're older. And you have to say, and I say to myself, allow me to practice patience because one day I will be that age. And I would hope that the young people behind me have patience for me, that I'm older and I need to walk slower. So it's kind of that, like, again, what am I meant to learn in this moment? What is this here to teach me? And sometimes it's something simple as patience. Sometimes it's something simple as compassion. Sometimes it's something as simple as empathy. You know what I mean? So it's just like taking that self-reflection moment, taking that deep breath, bringing yourself back to the moment and being like, what is this meant to teach me? And then sometimes later on you find out, oh, I was late because there was a huge accident on the highway. And then you say, well, thank God. Thank you. Thank you for protecting me in that moment. Thank you for making me run 15 minutes late so I wasn't in the accident. So sometimes it's like later on you realize why things happen the way they did. But I always say rejection is protection. The things that are happening that seem like obstacles are protecting you, or they're there to just bring you back to being like, okay, what part of me do I have to practice right now? Do I have to practice patience? Okay, allow me to bring up the part of me that's patient. Allow me to bring up the part of me that's compassionate. Allow me to bring the part up of me that's empathetic. Like those parts that we have to have in our tool belt, but they're not always the first, reaction that we bring out.
Yeah.
It's usually one that, like, after we're angry, you're like, okay, well, I surrender to this traffic jam. It's like, okay, well, how can we surrender quicker?
Actually, I was thinking of this because the first reaction, and we are, it's an auto mode that we just react instead of responding to situations and circumstances, right?
It's human.
The traffic jam, right? It's human. And you just said it. It's hard to be human. There is so much that is happening all the time. So what am I doing when I'm either brushing it off the signals as coincidence or just not paying attention, or instead of responding to the sign, I'm getting frustrated or angry? What am I doing?
When you're getting frustrated, angry, and you're closing I think the anger feeling or the frustrated feeling immediately closes your heart. Like it shuts it down. You're not open to receiving any guidance. You're not open to receiving anything in that moment. You're just like this, like just tight, like your hands are gripped on the steering wheel and you're like this, instead of saying, okay, I'm here. What am I here for? Like sometimes you're in a car with someone and you're in a traffic jam and, you turn the music down and then you actually are present with them in the moment and you're actually having a really good conversation. Why? Because you're stuck in 20 minutes in a traffic jam. And so whenever you're feeling that frustrated anger feeling, you're immediately closed off. You're immediately no longer in the moment. You're immediately allowing all the scenarios in your head to take the steering wheel instead of allowing the moment to teach you something rather than you having to control the moment. It's one of those, like, you can't you can't micromanage the universe as much as we want to. And so when you're feeling that anger, frustration, it's because you're trying to micromanage things that are out of your control. And so since it's out of your control, it's you taking a breath and surrendering to it. Not saying you can't be frustrated and angry. Give yourself that, 30-second pity party to be like, this sucks. Okay, but I can't do anything about it. So what do I need to see? What do I need to learn? Maybe I needed these 20 minutes before I got to the meeting to take a second. Maybe I was too rushed this morning and I wasn't going to be grounded enough to go to this meeting right now. Maybe I need to just prepare what I have to say in this meeting before I arrive. Like there's always little things you can do in those moments to be like, okay, what do I need to receive here, rather than trying to close yourself off immediately. Because as soon as you start to feel that, like, I want to control everything, you close yourself off from receiving anything.
Oh, but that also leaves me with another question. What do I need to be like on an alert mode all the time? Oh, where's my sign? What do I look for? Where is it coming from? Which direction?
Yeah, I know. For me, I think spirit moves quietly. I think it's not going to be like, if you're looking for a sign, here's the sign. I think it's when you're able to be open to receiving, and you're just constantly, it's practice to constantly bring yourself back and take a deep breath and catch yourself when you're allowing your mind to float away, to bring it back. It takes a lot of discipline in yourself to start constantly being like, oh, okay, I'm bringing it back. Oh, okay, I'm bringing it back. Oh, okay, I'm bringing it back. And I don't think you need to be like on alert all the time. I think you need to be on alert more on how often our mind likes to create fake realities, and to train it to bring it back to the present moment. That I think is like something that we all have to practice, even myself. I mean, that is just a constant forever practice in our lives. In terms of like signs that you're receiving, once you're in that neutral space by bringing it back, then I don't think you have to go looking for them at all. I think it's just they come when they come, and they come when you're open. And if it feels like one, it is one. And if it doesn't feel like one, then it isn't one. It's not like, oh, I have to be in this moment and I have to look for a sign because there's a reason I'm sitting in this traffic. Maybe there is, but there's other things it could be teaching you. It could be teaching you patience at that time. And that is the sign of like, okay, I just have to practice patience, and then that's it. And it's not going to be, like some other big thing. Or sometimes you're sitting in a traffic jam, and then maybe there's like a butterfly that floats by or something like that. And that's just like a little like, okay, maybe I just need to like go with the flow. I just need to be a little more loose. Like, there are things like that, but they're always very small, and it's only when you're open to receiving them. And it's never really when you're like focused on finding them. Because if you're really just focused on looking for the sign, then I think that also can be hard, because then you're trying to, again, micromanage the sign. Like you're, again, trying to control the universe and what's going to be shown to you and when it's going to be shown to you. I think it's just more so always just controlling your mind to bring it back to the present moment as much as you can. And just be open to receiving anything. Just be open to receive the love of the moment. And then things just unfold to you. And then I think it's just a little bit of seeing if we're not even, it's a weird word to say, but, and then just trusting your intuition and trusting your heart to kind of lead you into if something is in that moment that caught your eye, and what that might mean to you in that moment, or if a song's playing on the radio that you needed to hear. But it's never going to be like, I don't think if you're looking for it, you're going to find it. I think it's more so bringing yourself back to being open to receiving it, and then just being playful with it and seeing what might come.
Okay, so it's not the control, but a camaraderie that you create with the universe, because it is always going to surprise you with subtle signs.
Yes.
So correct me if I'm wrong, but the way I kind of summarize this entire discussion with you is be more present.
Yes.
Instead of being on alert, would be on an aware mode. to be
Mhm.
able to understand where am I mentally, not just physically, and have
Yeah.
fun with it.
Yeah.
Relax, stay
Relax.
relaxed. Okay.
Relax. Yeah, I think that's a big one of just like relax. Like it's not, as soon as you're open to understanding that there are signs everywhere, as long as you're in the present moment and open to receiving them, then it's not going to be this forcing, like clinging action that you have to take. It's more so just like you said, become aware, like just become aware of what's around you, become aware of what you might be listening to, become aware of the conversations you and be so like utterly present in those moments when you can. And then you'll see there's so many signs around you. There's so many things. I remember reading a quote in one of my favorite books, and the quote was, it was about the universe talking, and the quote said, "I've sent you nothing but angels." And that was just a really beautiful quote, because it was one of those things where it's like, you know what? When you're in those conversations, you're meant to be in that conversation. So be as present as you can in that conversation. When you're in the car, you're meant to be in that car. When you're in the traffic jam, you're meant to be in that traffic jam. So just surrender to it and be as present as possible. And then see the lesson or see the signs or see the guidance that you're open to receiving, and trust that the universe is always there and always supporting you and always sending you signs. And then you don't have to go looking for them, because it just becomes the way you live. It just becomes who you are.
This is such a fascinating topic, and it is so vast and so deep. We can go on and on. But now it's time for me to wrap up this conversation. But before I let you go, your final words to our audience.
Oh, finally.
Like, what do you want to say? Like, do you want to give them an advice? Do you want to suggest them something? How can they be more open?
How can they be more open? You are, I think my final word of advice would be, it's an interesting one. I think my final word of advice would be that the more you are open to receiving, the more you will receive. And to just pay it and just ask yourself how you would like to receive love. How do you like to receive love? And that's always where to start. I like to receive love by, I receive the most love by reading books, or I receive the most love by listening to music. What brings you the most pleasure? It's going to start there. Start with what brings you the most pleasure, and then you can start being more present in that moment. And then from that present moment, you'll be able to receive like just utmost guidance and love and support. And it feels like a warm hug, and it just, trust your intuitive pings. Like, just don't overthink them. If it feels true, it is true to you. And you don't have to explain it. You don't have to justify it to anyone. You can just say, I think that's a sign, and I'm going to trust it. And then allow that to be your gateway into just this beautiful conversation with you in the universe.
Thank you so much, Alyssa.
Thank you.